Merry Christmas! It is December, which is insane. I feel like I say that every year, but this year definitely feels like the fastest year of my life. Sorry, I have to keep the fan on because I'm wearing a long sleeve, but it is really blowing my hair in my face. But if I turn it off, then I will be sweating. Today's video is going to be a little bit negative, but I will be filming the best books of 2025. I just thought that it made more sense to start with this one. So as of today, I have read 85 books in the year 2025. I've read a lot of books this year, and so this is going to be the worst of the worst. I only have 4 books that I didn't finish out of 85. So it takes a lot for me to DNF a book. Most of the time I will push through, even if I'm not enjoying it, which I really need to get better at that because it's just a waste of time, isn't it? Regardless, we'll talk about 4 DNFs and then I have 10 books. I'm going to be talking about the books that I rated lower than 3 stars. So I do a 5-star rating system, just like most people who read do. For me, in my head, 3 stars is not a bad rating. I always rate books in the 0.5 system. So for me, a 2.5 or lower is bad. And I don't want to say that like these books are objectively bad, because reading is so subjective and I could be talking about your favorite book ever and I might. Know that it's no hard feelings. I'm sure, actually I know a lot of people hate some of my favorite books and that's okay, you know? This is my opinion, which doesn't matter at all at the end of the day. This is just for funsies. Feel free to let me know that you disagree with anything that I say. That's perfectly fine. We'll start with the DNFs. As I mentioned, it takes a lot for me to DNF a book. Like more than it should. You would think that I would put books down that I'm not enjoying a lot more often, but I don't. DNF is like physically cannot keep going, no matter how hard I try. Obviously I didn't rate them. I don't think it's fair to rate them because I didn't finish them, but just know that for me a DNF means I hated it so much. First book I DNF'd this year is a really controversial one, and that is A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. This was my first Ashley Poston book, and I don't think it was a good one to start out with because like a few months ago I read The Dead Romantics, loved it, it's gonna be on the best books of the year list, like obsessed with it. But A Novel Love Story, wow. I got this on audio through my library, so through the Libby app. You can either check out ebooks and then download them on your Kindle, or you can check out audiobooks. This audiobook was available and I was like, wow, I really want to read something by this author. I've heard amazing things. Decided to download the audiobook and listen to it while I go on walks. I really like to do that. I got around 50% of the way through, maybe like 40-ish. So I think that I gave it a really fair shot and I just had to call it because the audiobook narrator was like nails on a chalkboard. I am sorry to say, but I could not stand her voice. It was like screeching in my ears, and I know that that sounds really dramatic. I am from the South. Okay? I love a Southern accent. I think it's really endearing. Mine has definitely faded over the years. I haven't lived in the Carolinas since 2022. When I hear someone with a Southern accent, my soul like calls to them. I love it. Something about this woman's voice, I just knew it was, well, I guess I don't know for sure, but it really felt like it was someone trying to do a Southern accent that has only seen like Talladega Nights or something on TV. Like it was like someone doing an impression of a Southern accent that was so over the top and so annoying. I guess when I'm like, you know, quoting my mom or something and I like do my little Southern accent, it can be funny, but listening to someone do such an over the top accent for like hours on end in your ear, I cannot focus. Your accent sounds so fake to the point where it's so annoying. That sounds incredibly harsh. The biggest problem with this was the audiobook. If I physically read it, I probably would have finished it. I was really trying to look past the narrator's voice and just focus on the story and the plot and the characters. And I realized that like I actually do not care at all. There is not a single part of me that cares where the story is going or how it ends. The concept is really cool. Ashley Poston is a really creative person. The main character stumbles into the town of her favorite fictional book series. She meets these characters that she knows from books, and she's like, why are we meeting in real life? You're not real, kind of thing. Which is like really cool. Like, imagine stumbling into Stars Hollow or something. We don't know this fictional world. It's not like the author is actually writing about Stars Hollow and actually writing about the main character meeting Rory Gilmore. You know what I mean? It's like, we don't know this fictional world that the main character is obsessed with. So when she's talking about like, oh my gosh, it's this person from my book, or oh my gosh, it's this coffee shop that I read in my book, like, we don't have any connection to that. There's like this huge disconnect of like, you as the reader don't care about this fictional world that the main character thinks about because we don't get it. Does that make any sense? I don't know. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the fake world that she fell into because I had no connection to it at all. Didn't like the main character, and I hated the audiobook narration. And I understand that this takes place in the South, but like, just talk in a normal voice. Like, you do not need to do the most outlandish Southern accent. If you've read this book physically and have never listened to the audiobook and you liked it, let me know. Or do you agree with my opinion where it's like, I don't have any kind of connection to this fake world because I don't know it. It has no meaning to me. Does that make any sense? Anyway, we're moving on. Swing Time by Zadie Smith. This is my first Zadie Smith book. Zadie Smith to me is what I would call like a hot girl author, in the sense that you see a photo of a girl with like really cool style in New York and she's reading a book. Zadie Smith would fall into that category of books. Another example would be like Joan Didion, Eve Babbitt's, Otessa, what is her last name? My Year of Rest and Relaxation, that book. Mona Awad. All of those authors I would describe as like hot girl books or cool girl books. Like, no one is respectfully I was about to say something really mean. Should I say it anyway? No one is like looking across the subway at a girl reading Colleen Hoover and being like, oh, she's cool. If you saw someone reading Zadie Smith, you'd be like, oh, okay. She's cool, she's smart. That's the vibe. Obviously, I DNF'd it. It was so excruciatingly boring. It's called Swing Time, which is based on a movie that Judy Garland was in. She does blackface in the movie. And the way that this book was pitched to me was that this was going to be kind of an exploration of old films where blackface was a thing, and how weird and problematic that is. Actually, this book made me dive into the movie and other movies of that time. It was just like appalling to watch what this was actually about. Two brown girls dream of being dancers, but only one, Tracy, has talent. The other has ideas about rhythm and time. I recall almost none of this. Apparently it's about two girls who are dancers, and one of them is good and the other just like knows a lot about music and rhythm, but is not actually a talented dancer. I recall none of that. I remember being excruciatingly bored. I'll talk about a different book that I found boring, but the writing was incredible. Even though I didn't think the plot was interesting, I was underlining so many things because the way the author could write was like mesmerizing to me. This was like nothing of the sort. And I'm sorry. I want to read a different Zadie Smith book to like know if I'm the problem, because I don't think this is a very popular one by her. I think she has, you know, books that are way more revered, I guess. Nothing about this book compelled me at all except for the title, because like I said, I did an internet deep dive on Swing Time. I thought it was so boring. Sorry, I keep itching my face and my thing is broken, so I can't change the setting at all. David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Gosh, this is so heavy. I talked about this in my last video. This was given to me as a gift by my brother. I love my brother, but this was like so brutal. I feel like that's not super surprising. I know this book is well loved and extremely, you know, like critically acclaimed, and I mean, it's a Dickens novel. Obviously it's popular. I've read 120 something pages of this and I was like, okay, be for real. Like, be so for real. Who is enjoying this? Oh, I got to 178 pages. Okay. And I feel like I gave it a really fair shot. Could not come up with one morsel of care. I saw in somebody else's YouTube video that Charles Dickens got paid by the word or something, and you can tell. He is writing too many words to describe absolutely nothing. It was genuinely excruciating. This is about a little orphan boy. And that's it, really. Out of any of these, this one was the most surprising that I DNF'd it, and that is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. It's a short story collection, and I love the BBC show Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and what is his name? The guy who plays Bilbo Baggins. Oh my gosh, I love him. What is his name? He's also in Nativity. Iconic film. Put it on your Christmas watch list. Martin something. The show is incredible. Thank you to my college roommate Kate for showing me that show. A short story collection of, you know, Sherlock and Watson solving cases. Each story took me about an hour to read. Each episode is about an hour long, and every single time I would be reading one of these stories, I could not stop thinking about how I would have so much more fun if I was watching the show. This is also just like a random short story collection. The author published volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4, volume 5. Just like a random compilation of different stories from each volume, if that makes sense. I don't know if the version I have just like skipped all the good ones. I read 6 of the short stories in this book, and I made it 158 pages. If you're interested in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, watch the BBC show. It's so much better. Okay, let's get into the books that I read and finished, aka the worst books that I completed in 2025. The first book in this list is Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. This is book 2 in the Lunar Chronicles, which is kind of a sci-fi retelling of fairy tales. I think every one of them is about a princess except for this one. The first one is Cinderella, the third one is Rapunzel, the one I'm reading right now is Snow White, but this one is Little Red Riding Hood. Sci-fi is not my genre. I love fantasy, I love, you know, fairies and magic and kingdoms. Sci-fi is like robots and AI and computer and space, and that is just not my interest. It actually like stresses me out to read books like that. So this is about Scarlet, who is the Little Red Riding Hood of this world, and she is of course looking for her grandmother. The love interest in this book is named Wolf. I can't say much because this is book 2 in a series. I will say that this book felt the most random. I read book 1, I thought it was okay. I obviously read this one and didn't like it. And then I read book 3 and really enjoyed it. Now, book 3 has been my favorite in the series so far, and the things that happen in this book matter for book 3, so I'm not saying it was like pointless. I'm just saying that I didn't like it. Again, sci-fi is not my thing, so I didn't expect to like book 1 even, and I did. This book is very separate from book 1, and then book 3 kind of ties book 1 and book 2 together. This was just very uninteresting to me. Like I said, I understand the point of this after reading book 3. What is there to say? There's nothing more to say. I didn't like the plot, I didn't like the characters, I didn't care about their relationship. They're definitely my least favorite characters, my least favorite couple in the whole series. So I gave this 2.5. And I don't have anything else to say. The next book is the only book out of 85 books, only book all year long that I have given 1 star. And it is so rare for me to give out 1 stars. It's also rare for me to give out 5 stars. I truly hated it. I like can't even, A Touch of Darkness. This book was all over Book Talk, and I really don't trust Book Talk at all. As far as recommendations go, I feel like Book Talk is the least reliable. This is so bad. This is so bad. And what's funny is once I posted this on Goodreads that I read this, everyone in my real life that I'm actually like friends with were like, yeah, this book is terrible. I don't follow a lot of influencers on social media. I don't want to be influenced. So when I am like actually inspired by someone to like follow them on social media and care about their life, even though I don't know them, It is rare. There is a creator that I follow. She's just like a really cool person. She posted that she is not a reader. She's never gotten into reading. She's never cared about reading until she picked up this series, and now she's like obsessed with reading. And that really perked my ears up. Obviously, I'm a huge reader. I bought this with my own money. This is like embarrassingly bad. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and it is so bad. And I wish that I had other words. There's nothing to say. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling. I rated it 1 star. I hated it. It was atrocious, and it was bad. I'm speechless. Yeah, I never want to think about this book again. I can't wait to unhaul it after this video is over. I got this from my library. The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. Wait, is she who wrote The Girl in the Train? Paula Hawkins. Okay, this is a thriller. I read so many thrillers, and unfortunately I have become very picky in a way that I'm not with other genres. The fun of reading thrillers is that they're unpredictable, versus a romance novel is extremely predictable. You don't pick up a romance novel and think, I wonder if they're gonna get together or not. Versus a thriller, you want to be surprised. When you read a thriller where the plot twist catches you so off guard, it's like a high. But the more you read, the more rare that feeling becomes. So I think there's a couple different thrillers on this list. This is a book set in North Carolina. That is my favorite setting for a book. I have such an attachment to it. I will read anything set in North Carolina. Like, if you tell me the setting is North Carolina, that's all I need to know. This is about the richest woman in North Carolina. She owns like the grandest estate. So I was picturing like the Biltmore the whole time. She went missing when she was young or something like that. She dies and she leaves everything to her adopted son, Cameron or Camden. The rest of her family is very confused and upset, especially because Camden, or whatever his name is, wants nothing to do with it, or with her, or with this family, or with this life. His wife, Cameron's wife, starts uncovering some secrets about his family. I thought it was so boring. I don't know if it was the writing or what, but like nothing about the story as it was being told was compelling at all. Just boring. It was boring, it was not interesting, I didn't care, and that's that. It's One of Us. Again, I checked this out from the library, and again, I don't remember the author's name. J.T. Ellison. This is another thriller that I did not find thrilling. It's about this woman and her husband who are trying to get pregnant, and they are unsuccessful, so trigger warning for that. There is a murderer on the loose. Turns out the husband is the murderer's father. This is not a spoiler. When he was younger, he donated sperm and fathered a bunch of children that he didn't know about. And one of them is a murderer. Sounds really interesting. It was boring. What do I say? Let's read my Goodreads review. What is it about the majority of thrillers that the second they end, I don't remember a single thing I read? When I think about Gone Girl, or The Housemaid, or The Silent Patient, all of which I read years ago, I could tell you the whole plot start to finish. Somehow I finished this book 3 days ago, and I couldn't tell you a single thought I have. I don't even remember their names. It's true. And then I added an extra star solely for the audiobook being narrated by Julia Whalen. I love that woman. Which is true. She's like my favorite audiobook narrator. It wasn't interesting enough to stick in my brain. Yeah, 2.5 stars. The next book is called, oh gosh, The Happiness Equation. Neil Pasricha? I keep reading self-help books hoping for a different outcome, and I wonder when I will accept that I just don't like them. In the same way that I'm not a sci-fi person, I am not a self-help person. This is arguably my least favorite genre. I'm not the biggest nonfiction reader ever, as you can tell, but there are plenty of nonfiction that I have loved. I do not like self-help books. They are not helpful. They cringe me out. Everything that is said in hundreds of pages could have been said in an article, in a 2-minute video. A lot of going on and on and on about the same thing, and it's a lot of nothing you haven't heard before. A lot of it is common sense, and then they'll throw in the statistic to make it scientific. So this is about being happy and how to be happy. You know how you can be happy? Be content with what you have. I just summarize hundreds of pages in one sentence, and that is this whole book. Just be happy with what you have, be grateful for what you have, don't want more. I didn't like it, I didn't gain anything from it. A very simple concept explained in a trillion different ways, and I just don't think it's necessary. That's the thing about self-help books, is I just don't think they're necessary. I think most of the time they're like a random cash grab, but who am I to say? The reason I read this book is because I took it as a recommendation from someone who said that this changed their life. So obviously, if this changed your life, that's great for you. It just was a waste of my time. Personally. Best of Friends by Camilla Shamsie. Love this cover. This book was an interesting one. This was the one that I was referring to earlier when I said the writing was so good, I was highlighting so much, but I didn't like the story at all. I thought, because it's on the back of the book, I thought this was about two girls who were best friends when they were children in Pakistan. They both moved to London in their adult lives, and it just talks about, so I thought, it talks about what it means to carry a friendship in childhood and then through adulthood. And obviously the very different lives of living in Pakistan as young girls and living in London as adult women. I was craving books about female friendship. It's something that's really important to me and something that I love reading about. I thought this book would be entirely about female friendship, but what it actually is using these two characters to discuss UK politics, which I was not interested in. I'm not trying to, sound like I'm a stupid American who doesn't care about the rest of the world's politics. I just wasn't expecting to read that when I picked up this book. I thought her writing was great. I underlined quite a few things. Like, listen how beautiful this is. The two girls are Zara and Miriam, and it says, Miriam was lost. Zara felt her friend's pain move into her own heart, sharp and surprising. So this is love, she thought. That is such a gorgeous sentence. This is another one. He moved on and she took another sip of her coffee. It was a triumph, if you were a woman, to move between visibility and invisibility in a way that suited you rather than being scrutinized and ignored in equal infuriating measure. Childhood friendship really was the most mysterious of all relationships. I quoted that in my maid of honor speech at my best friend's wedding. I read this just before, and I thought the whole book would be more about that, more about how rare it is to have a childhood friendship that lasts through to adulthood. I would say the first half maybe is what that's about, and then the last half is just like this larger, bigger discussion about politics and political injustices in the UK. Which is, of course, important to talk about. It's hard because I'm not like, this is a bad book, and if you have deep interest in UK politics, I think this would be the perfect book for you. I just was lost a little bit. She's a very, very talented author, and I can tell that she is very smart. I almost felt like I was getting smarter as I was reading this, whereas this, for example, is like pure brain rot. So I feel weird almost saying I didn't like this, even though it's true, but the writing is good. I read, another self-help book. I talked about this in a previous video. This is The Emotion Code by, I don't want to have to look it up again, I think his name is Bradley Nelson. This was recommended to me by one of my best friend's moms, who I love. Just love that woman with all my heart and soul. I was talking about some of my experiences. Yep, that's all I'll say. I was talking about some of my experiences, and she recommended this book, and I wrote it down immediately, and I was like, I'll do anything you say. It was interesting. It was a little bit like woo-woo. It felt like pseudoscience. Let me make sure I actually know what that word means. A system of theories, assumptions, and methods that are presented as scientific but lack evidence. That's exactly what this is. So the idea of this book is when we experience physical pain, it is because that pain is linked to something emotional that happened to us before. This is true. in a sense, right? Like your mental state can affect your body physically. If you experience trauma, that can manifest itself into something physical. The way he talks about it, it's just, I don't know if I'm buying this. He talks about like chronic pain and, serious things, and he says that those things are just trapped emotions because of something you experienced as a child or even as a baby, or even something your parents experienced. Your dad could have been dropped as a baby and now you have chronic pain. I don't know. If I sound crazy, that's because I don't know what I'm saying. There were some points about emotion being linked to physical pain that I think makes sense, but there was a lot of things that I was like, what are you talking about? Okay, I just typed in the emotion code Bradley Nelson examples and a Reddit thread came up. Yeah, so this person says, there's definitely something to emotional trauma being stored in the body, but this author says that he can pinpoint where and how that trauma is going to manifest into physical. Yeah, this is a scammy new age technique that's effective because of the placebo effect. This is what I would agree with. Like, for example, this woman goes through divorce. She has like pain in her right arm. And then she schedules an appointment with an emotion code doctor, looks at her arm, and he's like, did you experience divorce? And she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, divorce is blah, 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 which would make sense why you have pain in your arm. What? It felt very new agey, except that he would like reference God a lot. I thought this was weird, and I thought he was full of it. And he's like, if you just do these emotion code techniques, then you'll never have pain again. And the reason why I say it's pseudoscience is because the only evidence to support any of his claims was testimonies. There was no scientific evidence of it at all. Yeah, and that's all I'll say about that. I gave the emotion code 2 stars. The next book that I rated 2 stars was The Good Girl by Mary Kubica. Another thriller that I didn't like. I read this on a plane. I didn't like download anything else for that plane ride, and I think if I had, I would have DNF'd this. It's about a girl who goes missing. This girl who gets kidnapped, she's like 25, so she's an adult. And it goes through the timeline of the mother trying to find her daughter and working with a detective, and then also the kidnapper and the kidnapped. It goes through their perspective as well. It's boring. This video is harder than I thought it would be because I feel like books that I love, it's a lot easier for me to explain I love them versus books I didn't like. I don't know what else to say other than I didn't like it. It was another thriller I didn't think was very thrilling. In fact, I thought it was boring, which is the worst quality a thriller could have. Then I read the most controversial on this list, as I don't think I've ever heard a bad review of this book ever. I've only heard this book being on my favorite books of all time list, books that changed my life list. This is on a lot of authors' list of this book made me want to be a writer, and I'm not a writer, so I will say, what do I know? But that book is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I love this movie. Hear me when I say this? I love this movie. I love Studio Ghibli movies. I grew up watching Studio Ghibli movies. I think this movie is incredible. This book was a slog. Again, with the Sherlock Holmes book, the whole time I was reading this, I just kept thinking this time that I'm spending would be so much more enjoyable if I was watching the film. And I want to make it clear that I never say that. It sounds like I do because I've said it twice in this video. I'm the person who always thinks that the book is better, and I will be extra annoying when watching a movie trying to explain to someone how the book is so much better. But for whatever reason, this book was not. I think Studio Ghibli just did such a good job with this story, and trying to read this was tough. This is about a man named Howl and his moving castle. And there's a girl named Sophie who works at a hat shop, and she gets turned into an old lady. She's trying to undo this spell, she moves into his castle, and such story unfolds. I said this in a different video. I compared this to the experience of reading Alice in Wonderland. I read that years ago, and I also didn't like it. I also thought the Disney film was better. There's just something about it being very nonsensical and not having a plot that really works in a film, and for me doesn't work in a book. For it to just be like anything can be anything because it's all random, it's all nonsense. It, for me, is like hard to follow in a story, but it's a lot easier for me to follow on screen. Does that make sense? Like watching Alice in Wonderland, a lot more enjoyable than trying to read, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, because we're in a Wonderland and anything could happen and there's no point to anything. I feel the same way about this. I think as a film, it just really, really worked. It's a beautiful film. Funnily enough, right after I read this, I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, which I mentioned earlier, and in her author's note at the end, she puts top 10 favorite books of all time, and this was on there. And I had just finished this like the day before, and I was like, so maybe it's a me problem. Howl's Moving Castle, I gave 2.5 stars. Sorry. And the last book that I read that I gave 2 stars is The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. I've owned this book since high school, so a part of me feels so good about myself that I was able to read this and get it off my physical TBR, because I have owned it for literally almost a decade and never read it. This book has always intrigued me. It is about a princess who is about to undergo an arranged marriage, and she freaks out and flees the night before her wedding. So there's her perspective, and then there's 2 other male perspectives. One of them is her prince that she was supposed to marry, and the other is the assassin that was sent to kill her. I will say that I am not the target audience for a YA novel. YA books are typically 12 to 17, anywhere in that range. I am no longer in that age bracket, so I'm not the target audience for this. Maybe if I read this at 15 when I actually bought it, I would have loved this story a lot more. I saw the twist coming from a mile away. As soon as the 2 men were introduced, I was like, yep, this one's that one, that one's that one. So that reveal wasn't as exciting as I thought it was gonna be. The whole running away from her kingdom, it's a lot of drama. And then this is like a minor spoiler, I guess, but it's not giving anything away. She settles into this really small village and decides to just be a villager, and obviously the 2 men follow her. Once it got to that point where like they're all settled, they're all like moved in to this village, it got so boring. And she's kind of like falling in love with both of them. It's a bit of a love triangle. With a lot of these books, they sound interesting, so I pick them up, and then the actual execution is very boring. Someone commented on my Goodreads and said, stick it out, the series gets so much better. I don't think I'm going to. I'm happy to leave it there. Those were all the worst books that I read in 2025. Let me know the worst book you read this year, what it was. But I hope you enjoyed. Again, let me know your least favorite book that you read this year. I'll see you in the best books of 2025 video. Thanks for watching!